What is Jesus' clearing of the temple all about? I'm Amy here at the Lakes, and today we're taking a look at Mark chapter 11. And in Mark 11, you've probably heard the story of Jesus clearing the temple. It goes like this. On reaching Jerusalem, Jesus entered the temple area and began driving out those who were buying and selling there. He overturned the tables of the money changers and the benches of those selling doves, and would not allow anyone to carry merchandise through the temple courts. And as he taught them, he said, "It is written, 'My house will be called a house of prayer for all nations,' but you have made it a den of robbers." Now, at first glance, we might think that the money changers and those selling doves were doing something wrong. Well, in fact, they were actually helping the pilgrims to Jerusalem during the Passover purchase sacrifices to be made in the temple. And so they were actually doing a good biblical thing according to the law. Now, whether they were charging the appropriate prices or all of those things, whether there was corruption involved, I'm not sure. Now, I've heard this taught where Jesus is showing emotion here, and that's really the moral of the story, is that he's a human being that experiences emotion and anger and expressing his humanity. But I think that maybe both of these explanations fall short of what's really happening in this story. Jesus himself explains his actions in the end of the story. And he actually quotes Isaiah chapter 56, verse 7 in his explanation. And that's where he says, "My house will be called a house of prayer for all nations." And I was really curious, well, what does Isaiah 56 actually say? And how does that help inform us as to what's happening here in this passage? So let's take a look. So in Isaiah chapter 56, it says, "This is what the Lord says. To those who keep my Sabbath, you choose what pleases me and hold fast to my covenant. To them I will give within my temple and its walls a memorial and a name, better than sons and daughters." So he's talking about those who are outside of the Jewish ethnicity. Isaiah here is talking about the foreigners. And then he goes on, "And foreigners who bind themselves to the Lord to serve him, to love the name of the Lord and to worship him. All who keep the Sabbath without desecrating it and who hold fast to my covenant, these I will bring to my holy mountain and give them joy in my house of prayer." And that's the part that Jesus quotes, that the temple is to be a house of prayer for all the nations. Their burnt offerings and sacrifices will be accepted on my altar. And then here it is, "For my house will be called a house of prayer for all the nations." So what Jesus is really talking about here is the inclusion of all ethnicities in worship of God. Particularly those who are called Gentiles. That is, everyone who is not Jewish by birth. So I think that when we look at the broader passage of Isaiah 56, we can understand that in a better way. So there's only one area in Herod's temple that was the temple that was in existence when Jesus was walking the earth. There's only one area in that temple where Gentiles were welcome and for worship. And this is also the area that the money changers and those selling doves had set up. And so I think Jesus has in view here that the Gentiles were actually being limited in their worship of God, in the space, the actual physical space that they had to come into the temple and worship. Jesus is showing his concern for the worship of the Gentiles. He's concerned to the point of violence, right? About the inclusion of all peoples. That he would actively clear out the money changers and dismiss those selling doves. And by his gospel, he's put both Jew and Gentile on equal footing. Those of all ethnicities are welcome to be a part of his kingdom. We are invited to join with others of all different ethnic groups in worship of Jesus.